In 1985, the band Starship released the single We Built This City. 31 years later, GQ magazine declared it to be the most detested song in human history. This was, of course, before Baby Shark appeared. Starship had quite a high turnover of members, but they formed in 1984, kind of from the ashes of the band Jefferson Starship. They have had four studio albums and significantly retained the main singer from Jefferson Starship, Grace Slick, who, for the first two of these albums, it was she who sang We Built This City, and she was also the main singer of the previous band, Jefferson Starship. Winding backwards, Jefferson Starship were formed in 1974 and existed for 11 years, released 7 studio albums in that time. Confusingly, they reformed in 1992, and so there are currently two bands, one called Starship and one called Jefferson Starship. Well, actually, the first one's now called Starship featuring Mickey Thomas. Since their reconvention, Jefferson Starship have released 3 more studio albums. Once again, there's been quite a bit of movement of members. As if this was not confusing enough, we can wind back even further because Jefferson Starship were born out of the ashes of a band called Jefferson Airplane. This band was formed in 1965 in San Francisco and were a pivotal band in the burgeoning hippie psychedelic movement. It's fair to say that they were hugely influential, their breakthrough single being White Rabbit. This band name also had quite a number of members, and as if to deliberately muddy the waters, they had a reunion in 1989. They had 8 studio albums in their main stint and another in 1989, helpfully called Jefferson Airplane, in case there was any confusion. So, one abiding person through some of the incarnations of these different bands was and is the iconic voice of Grace Slick. Another who was one of the driving forces was Paul Kantner, who was a rhythm guitarist. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the third album by Jefferson Airplane. I have reviewed this album before. I used to have a blog. It's a complicated background history, so I'm not going to revisit it again. But I am revisiting this album again, which is nice. I kind of seen it on my list and thought, yeah, that's going to be a nice little treat. So I would describe this as being committedly psychedelic rock. There's no half measures here. They're really full in on being psychedelic. Musically, it's often quite loose in a space rock kind of way, and at times it kind of bumbles along in a space rock kind of way too. And using the word bumble makes it feel like there's a negative. It's not. I really enjoy that kind of thing. There's influences here from rock, from folk, even jazz. Eastern music. I'm not sure what else. There's lots of stuff kind of thrown in here. The song structures are loose, and there's some nice extended improvisation stuff going on, including one where the bass is featured. I always like a nice bit of featured bass. And the tones, the kind of textures here range from gentle folk-like psychedelic stuff with flutes and recorders and acoustic guitars and words like waterfall colours and to more harder, darker rock sounds and some more somewhat disturbing lyrics at times. So lyrics are mostly kind of painting the picture stream of consciousness kind of stuff. And sometimes they're on the darker side of the imagination, definitely psychedelic, possibly inspired by acid trips. I can't, I'm not going to throw an accusation there, but it wouldn't surprise me, especially with some of the dreamlike imagery here and occasional, what I would call a synesthetic phrase, which is crossover of the senses. Um, a lot of psychedelia or psychedelic stuff or stuff that might be thought of as being hippie music was quite light and airy and had this affected naivety, which is basically saying, we're going to pretend to be quite childlike and give it that kind of feel. So Sid Barrett era Pink Floyd is kind of classic for that. Songs about bicycles and gnomes and things. This isn't like that. It's darker and not always dark, but and even when when it is dark, it's not despondent. It's just kind of more knowing and more kind of weird undercurrent there. The tracks are sweets with subtracts, giving it unusual structure. My favourite section is a section called "A Small Package of Value Will Come to You Shortly." which is kind of a mixture of there's some jazz improvisation, some tape splicing, a cafe background, and some spoken voice bits, and all sorts of weird, interesting things going on. And my favourite bit of this is where somebody shouts, "No man is an island," a couple of times, and then followed by somebody saying quite quietly, "Here's a peninsula." So there's actually quite a bit of humour going on in here in the album as well. Quite like Grace Slick's singing. It's distinctive, and I quite enjoy it. I'm less bothered by Paul Kapner's voice, get his name right, and the other male voices here. They're not bad, but they're not as distinctive as Grace Slick, who's got a very strident sounding voice. So, overall, I enjoyed it as an album. It's an album that I feel like it feels thrown together. It's not as coherent as some albums are, but it is engaging and it's enjoyable and it's kind of dark and bonkers at the same time. So that's what I think. As always, I'd love to invite you to tell me what you think of this album. Anything you want to throw in about Jefferson Airplane-Starship, any of that kind of continuum of bandness. Please do leave a comment, and that's it from me for now.
To get in though. I don't understand. No man is an island. No man is an island. He's a peninsula.